What's going on, everybody? Welcome in Fantasy Alarm TV. I'm your host, Howard Bender, and welcome to 3-Point Play, where Fantasy Alarm analysts battle it out head-to-head, mano-a-mano, on some of the hot-button topics around sports. Now, in honor of the Fantasy Alarm NFL Draft Guide being out, and we're all gearing up for fantasy football season, well, I figure let's do a full football theme. John, you took it a step too far here with that disgusting jersey. Jon Impemba, everybody. Jon Impemba battling it out with me today. What's going on, dude?
Yeah, Howard, I'm doing pretty good. When he told me we were doing a football 3-point play, I figured I would just go ahead and dress for the occasion. So just ready to go.
You've got some dead gopher blood on your left shoulder there. You might want to get that off.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yes, we are going to do some football topics here. If you're new to the show, it's very simple. We debate 3 topics. In order for your side to represent, you need 3 separate, distinct points in your argument. So let's get it started right now. And John, in honor of that horror show of a jersey, most recent report says, guess what? Rob Gronkowski practicing with TB12. That's right. The two of them hanging out in the offseason and making that happen. So the question I pose to you, and I kind of feel like I know where you're going to go with this, but should Gronk stay retired and make an immediate make an immediate comeback?
As a Patriots fan, I would love to see Rob Gronkowski get back on the field, just given the depth of the receiving core that the Patriots have this season. But I'm actually going to go with him staying retired. And my feelings for that is now it's been a couple seasons now since the Eagles Super Bowl where hints have gone around that he was considering retirement. People have wondered if it's going to be, a leverage play against New England. But for me, point number 1 is he doesn't need the money. He's already kind of in that half-retirement mindset. Reports are he's never spent a dime that he's made from his NFL contracts. He's been very good with his money management. Over the course of his career, he's only spent his, advertising money or promotional money. He's netted $53 million over the course of his NFL career. If he's not 100% in it, there's no reason for him to do it. He doesn't need the money. Point number 2, he suffered 13 injuries since being part of the New England Patriots. A lot of those have required surgery. A lot of those required him to miss games. He had back surgery while in college, so he's a well-documented injury history there. At his young age, there's no reason to continue risking your body when, like I said, you don't need the money. You're healthy right now. You're young. You put in a great career. There's no reason for you to continue to put your body on the risk out there and risk injury again. And point number 3, have you seen his girlfriend, Camille Koscheck, cover model for the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue? If I have the free time in my hands, no longer in football, I would definitely want to be spending it with her. So in my opinion, I think he should be staying retired. He did an interview this week where they asked him what he's going to do with all his free time now. He says he hasn't had an August off since he was 9. So for me, if the man's mindset is to enjoy life, he doesn't need to play football, doesn't need to risk his body anymore. He's got a nice-looking girlfriend. Go spend time with her. Stay retired for his own personal well-being.
All of that makes a ton of sense, no doubt about it here. The question is can he stay retired? Can he stay away from the game? Or is it something that's just been so ingrained in him? You just said he hasn't had an August off since he was 9. Yes, Gronk likes to party. Gronk likes to do his own thing. But, when push comes to shove, when you've been doing something the same over and over again, it's ingrained in you. It really is. So, for me, point number 1 would be that mindset and how tough it is for athletes who can still play the game, actually stay away from the game. It's a rarity for a lot of things there. Point number 2, the Patriots, they're going to lure him back in. He's going to get those calls from Tom Brady on a regular basis there. Brady leans on his favorites. So if the Pats are going to win, he needs a security blanket. There aren't enough guys over there. So they're going to find some way to really kind of lure him in. And then you say he doesn't need the money, and I agree with you. He does not need the money because, hey, $53 million, what I could do with $53 million is unbelievable. But let's face facts. While he doesn't need that money, or the Patriots need that money, marketing a Gronk comeback, huge. change the jersey number, and sell a whole ton of different jerseys out there. The lead up to it would just be incredible. I mean, listen, you Patriots fans are rabid dogs for your Gronk, and I'm sorry, there's so much that can be put into marketing a Gronk return. I just feel like that's what's going to end up happening to him, when all of a sudden they're sitting there midway through the season. Patriots are like, well, we're going to be going to the playoffs here. Do we have the team to make it happen? What happens all of a sudden? Gronk comes back midseason. He's the hero. He's already revered enough for his play on the field and his part of the dynasties for the New England Patriots. But to come in and be the hero in one of what should be Tom Brady's final seasons, what should be one of Bill Belichick's final seasons, to have that, to be Gronk and to say, I'm coming back and I'm going to, help give these guys one last championship, I think it's going to be too hard for him to pass up.
Yeah, I was one of the people that definitely believed there was a chance that he could be taking this first half of the year off and coming back for, whatever it is, week 10 or whatever part of the season that he would be the latest for allow him to get back, play the last couple of games of the regular season, go into the playoffs. But I don't know if you've seen recent photos of Rob Gronkowski. It looks like he's probably lost about 30 or so pounds. He doesn't look like a guy that's gearing up for a regular football season. A player like his stature where he goes over the middle, he was as effective as he was because he was able to take those beatings for as long as he was able to. If he's going to be now a more diminished, thinner version of Rob Gronkowski, how effective is he going to be? He's going to have the size advantage over those linebackers and safeties. For me, I just don't think he's in the mindset. His body doesn't look like a football player at the moment. I just don't see it happening. I think you should stay retired.
Do you not think a simple return to the 6-week cycle will actually put that muscle mass back onto the body there?
What are you insinuating there?
I'm not insinuating. I'm saying flat out. You look at that chiseled features of Gronk while he was playing versus what he looks like right now. I'm thinking a couple of injections, and hey, he's right back on that horse, and all he needs is 6 weeks to get ready.
Yeah, supplements are a crazy thing. Like I said, we'll wait and see. You're asking me now if I think you should say retire to come back. I think you should say retired if that's what your mindset is. There's no reason to come back, sort of the half-assed sort of, right? Like he's in for the rest of the season, but is he out next year? Is he back to retired? Is he going to be worried about going over the middle because he knows this is it for him? He's only coming back to do them a favor. I'd rather a fully committed football player than a guy who's in there, for a couple of weeks, and then next year we're all over again. So
yeah, I got you, and I see an egomaniac who would love nothing more than to return to the spotlight and be the savior for the Patriots dynasty coming to a close there. Full circle. What do you guys out there think? Should Gronk stay retired? Should Gronk make like a midseason comeback? He's at J Impemba 777. I am at RotoBuzz Guy. You can tweet us also at Fantasy Alarm. Would love to hear your guys' thoughts. Discussion number 2, debate number 2 here. Not so much a debate as more as who is your call for the first quarterback to be benched this season? I thought long and hard about this one, John. There were 2 that I was leaning on, and I'll tell you the one that I'm going to do. I'm going to say that Case Keenum is going to end up being the first quarterback benched this season. First of all, let's face facts. We already know Case Keenum is nothing more than a placeholder. The team drafted Dwayne Haskins, who Dan Snyder absolutely loves. So there's really, you've got nothing to lose by benching Keenum because he's not in your future plans anyway. And frankly, they're probably a little bummed that Haskins fell into their lap, that they ended up signing Keenum. So I think he's on a very, very short leash. Point number 2, there are no receivers in Washington. You got Trey Quinn in the slot. Josh Doxson's garbage. Paul Richardson, okay, he could be all right. Jordan Reed, the over-under all set on 6 games played this year when he tears something, breaks something, whatever it is. And so with that, they're gonna blame somebody for the lack of a passing game there, and they won't say that there were horrible personnel choices and you didn't give this guy any weaponry whatsoever. You basically set him up to fail, which means that's an easy, quick hook right there of Case Keenum. And then point number 3, again, it goes back to Dan Snyder. Listen, Jay Gruden's already on the hot seat right now. I wrote an article about that in the Fantasy Alarm Draft Guide. Dan Snyder wants results, whether they're realistic or they're not realistic. I think Dan Snyder puts enough pressure on Jay Gruden, tells him that his job is at stake if he doesn't develop Dwayne Haskins properly, and that means putting Haskins in. And I think that's going to be a pretty quick exit for my man Case Keenum, which is a crying shame considering the good that he has done for teams before. But what are you going to do? First guy on the bench.
Yep. I mean, definitely a good choice for sure. I'm going to go with another guy that's a placeholder, in my opinion here, and that's going to be Ryan Fitzpatrick over in Miami.
My other choice.
Your other choice, right. Fitzmagic, for all of his wonders that we've seen him do every once in a while when he gets under center, those stints are always short-lived. He always ends up blowing up. Brand new, point number one, brand new coaching team over there in Miami, and they went out and they traded for their guy in Josh Rosen. Made it a point to sort of have him save him from that Arizona team after they basically discarded him after he was just a top 10 pick. And I think that new coaching staff's there figures Rosen to be their future quarterback, their franchise quarterback. But it makes sense for them to bring in the veteran like Ryan Fitzpatrick to at least start the season for them. Get the show on the road for a little bit, hope he can carry him a little bit, show them how to, run an offense, give Rosen the leadership they didn't really have while he was in Arizona, someone to learn from a little bit and eventually, turn the ropes over to him. Number two, Fitzpatrick's not a very good quarterback. Like I said, he has his moments every once in a while, but I mean, we're talking about a guy here with, a 60% career completion percentage. A lot of those numbers were helped, in his 8-game stint last year where he had, a career high 66% completion percentage. The majority of the time he's under 60% completion. He throws a lot of interceptions. He's one of those gunslinging quarterbacks that, just throws it all around the field. That can only last you so long, and in a lot of those times, those games turn into disasters, and that's going to lead to chance to bring in Rosen. So I think he's going to be on a short leash if he starts to struggle, if he turns into the quarterback that he's pretty much been his whole career, which is a backup level quarterback guy that can help you in a pinch in the right circumstances. And then point number three, again, I don't think the Dolphins figured to be a good football team. Why are they going to let Ryan Fitzpatrick start all season? So for me, I think if they get off to a slow start, 0-3, 0-4, they're going to have the pressure to get Rosen in there, and I can see that happening pretty quickly. And that's kind of my take there with Fitzpatrick being the first quarterback benched.
The reason that I opted to go with Case Keenum and not going with Ryan Fitzpatrick here is because I also question whether or not Ryan Fitzpatrick actually starts this season, or if he doesn't end up as the backup quarterback to Josh Rosen, who could then be an interesting first benching, to say the least. They signed Fitzpatrick in March when they still thought that they were going to probably go with Tannehill. They didn't end up trading for Josh Rosen until the NFL draft, which was, a month later than it all went down. So to me, I'm wondering, Brian Flores, new coach over there, is it possible that they say, listen, Josh Rosen is our future. We have to show that we're going to commit to him. We start with Josh Rosen, and we've got a good solid backup in Ryan Fitzpatrick if something does happen. I agree with you that Fitzpatrick's got a very limited shelf life in season. The Fitzmagic only lasts about for like a week and a half to 2 weeks.
2 or 3 weeks. He'll make everybody spend their fab budget on him after a 4-touchdown game, and then he'll go in the toilet like he did last year. Yeah, my thinking here is just some of the reports that I've read where it seems that Rosen is behind him on the depth chart at least to start the year. Obviously training camp battle, something to watch for. You never know how Rosen's going to perform in preseason games, how Fitzpatrick performs in preseason games, how quickly they pick it up. Anything's possible to change. I'm just looking at the depth chart right now that has Fitzpatrick at the top, Rosen behind him, and I definitely expect that to change some point this year.
Yeah, it's a horror show situation, to say the least, in Miami, and I don't envy head coach Brian Flores coming from the Patriots and then having to try and piece together the nightmare that is.
They did take a lot of New England staffers with him, though, so he's bringing a little New England down to Miami. Worries me just maybe a little bit, but not overall.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work in the nice weather. It doesn't work.
Patriots can never win in Miami, so
There you go. Yeah. All right, so, I'll tell you what. Let's just say that these are two very, very good choices, and we'll let everybody else out there decide who it is. So let's go to debate number 3 here. The Scott Fish Bowl is going on right now. John, you're in the Scott Fish Bowl. I'm in the Scott Fish Bowl. The slow drafts are happening right now. One of the interesting aspects here of the Scott Fish Bowl is that tight ends get an extra bump. They get an extra half point. It's half point PPR, and it's a half point for a first down for running backs and wide receivers. For tight ends, it's a full point per reception. It's a full point for a first down there. And so tight ends now have the obvious added value that we have. So my question is with the tight end position being as craptastic as it really is right now, and it's atrocious. It's been atrocious, and it is atrocious still right now. You've got maybe 5 or 6 who you like. Yeah. We'll have to wait and see. But the question is should we just say this blanket across all leagues and just say, you know what? Let's bump up the tight ends no matter what. Let's always give them a half point more than running backs and wide receivers to sort of level that playing field a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start us off, and I agree with yes. I think the tight end should get a little bit of a boost here. Point number 1, there's really only a handful of tight ends, and that list actually got a little bit shorter with Gronkowski retiring. I know last year Gronk wasn't the Gronk that we're used to seeing, but in years past he's always been one of the top 2-3 elite tight ends in the league. Losing him really drops us down to Travis Kelce, who's really number 1, and then you drop down to Ertz and Kittle, and they'll be your 2 and 3 in that top tier at the tight end position. So the fact that the position itself isn't very favorable, it only makes sense to really help increase their points, just to sort of level out the position a little bit more. Point number 2, it adds more draft strategy now. You see a lot of teams where maybe you've been preaching it all year. You've been trying to get Kelce early in pretty much every draft. Then you see Ertz, you see Kittle go, and then you have like a long lag of tight ends. A lot of people take the wait on tight end approach because once you get to the middle to late rounds, like all the tight ends are about the same player. So what's the point really? But adding this extra half point to them, well, increasing their fantasy points now makes them more competitive with the other positions, like you said. So now, maybe the wide receivers that are all going in the middle rounds. Well, now there's tight ends that are having comparable type of fantasy production because of those extra points that they're receiving. So I think it makes draft strategy a little bit more interesting. You're not as handcuffed to taking the receivers here because you can take a tight end now that has comparable numbers and not have to worry about the end of the draft. And number 3, it just makes players overall more relative. As I said, if you go down to the end of the tight end positions, pretty much from tight end 4 to tight end 8, they're basically all the same player. They're averaging somewhere in between what was it last year, 160 to 140 fantasy points. Like there's not like a huge gap in between there, but giving them a little additional points closes that gap a little bit, makes them more fantasy relevant to everybody to draft. So I think it's better for the position. It increases more players to choose from the player pool that have fantasy relevance. So I'm for additional scoring here for the tight end position. I just think it's better for everybody in fantasy football, better for the player pool, better for your flex. If you're looking for that last flex spot, now a tight end because maybe a bit more viable where everybody's always trying to get receivers or running back. So for me, I'm for the additional scoring here.
Yeah, I was hoping that you would be. I tried steering you in that direction because I'm telling you, man, I don't think so. Listen, point number 1, all right, every year there's a position that lags and we change scoring to try and beef them up. That was the emergence of PPR. Like you had running backs like LaDainian Tomlinson, Terrell Davis, and Sean Alexander, and these guys could crush it for you with just them. They could beat your entire opposition's whole fantasy team because they're rushing for 183 yards and 3 touchdowns on a regular basis, and 2 of those touchdowns are like 68-yard runs. So like we end up dealing with adding in PPR so that we could boost the value of the wide receivers. Well, now here we are in a pass-heavy NFL, and there are so many multi-back backfields that we're dealing with that now of a sudden the scoring for wide receivers has really kind of jumped up, and it's not necessary to have that PPR format because of that. So now if we bump up the tight end position here, at some point or another, we're going to end up seeing like the emergence of a better Kelsey or a better Gronk, and then you're going to be like, oh my God, there are like 5 tight ends out there who all of a sudden are better than the top wide receivers in the game. I mean, it's obviously an exaggeration, but the fact is that this game is continuously evolving. And if we continue to change the scoring to try and beef up certain positions, we're going to end up wanting to just get rid of it again, because there are tons of people out there right now. They've already started doing it with going down to a half-point PPR. Now that there's a huge rise in standard leagues as well, because they don't feel that necessary to have it happen. Point number 2, we have seen a number of tight ends step up their games and have increased value. If you look at our rankings just over at Fantasy Alarm, you got Kelsey, Ertz, and Kittle. But I mean, look at that. Hunter Henry, yes, he's coming back from an injury, but before that, huge red zone target. Eric Ebron, huge red zone target. Evan Engram does work between the 20s and inside the red zone. O.J. Howard, I think, is going to have a breakout campaign this year. Delaney Walker leads the Titans in receptions usually every year. David Njoku is going to still be a big factor over in Cleveland. Greg Olsen, Jordan Reed, Austin Hooper, my guy, Austin Hooper. Trey Burton, Vance McDonald, Jared Cook. I'm looking at these and boom, suddenly there's 15 viable tight ends. Now, yeah, is the difference between the number 4 and the number 15 that significant? No, it's not really that significant. So then why do we need to beef up the scoring there? Are we beefing up the scoring to make them more viable candidates, closer to Ertz and Kelsey value there? It just makes no sense to me. And then point number 3, if you don't like the tight end position, if you think the tight end position is crap, just absorb it into the wide receivers. Like, just absorb it into them. Make it's wide receiver or tight end. You can have either or there. So that way you can draft Travis Kelsey just like you would be drafting, high-end PPR wide receivers. Antonio Brown, that level up? No, probably not. Like, he's drafted that high up because of his relative value to the tight end position. But if you just absorb him into the wide receivers in a pass-heavy NFL, maybe Travis Kelsey is all of a sudden like a 4th rounder or a 5th rounder or something like that. Your flex spots are already wide receiver, running back, or tight end. So why not just give you that option there for the wide receiver position? You're building up the depth there on the receiving targets, and to me, that just kind of seems to work.
Yeah, I mean, I think the comparison here is really to make the middle to bottom tier tight ends more competitive with the other receivers, right? Like, it's not necessarily to bring them closer to tight ends, because that's obviously not going to happen. It'll make them more valuable as a position, because now you said, the number 8 tight end is maybe more comparable to the number 30 wide receiver in terms of fantasy scoring, because they're getting that extra half a point for, in Scott Fish, they get a half a point for the first down and for the reception more than the receiver. So they're almost getting a full point if they get a first down catch, more than the next receiver. So it's really, I think, to bring them closer to the receiver group, because they are receivers, technically they are receivers. And it's just that teams don't often utilize the tight end as much, but their position on the field that we have to use for fantasy. If you wanted to agree to a compromise, I love the idea of just meld them into tight ends. Nobody's going to draft a tight end if you do that, or meld them into wide receivers. Nobody's really going to draft a tight end if that ends up being the case. Still draft a Kelsey and an Ertz, whatever, because that becomes their wide receiver 2 or 3, type play. But, I mean, then at least you're not handcuffed into having to draft, a Mark Andrews or something like that, late in draft, where they're not really valuable, but they're valuable because they're a tight end comparative to the other players, but they're worse than, a top 50 wide receiver. So,
I mean, listen, I think you can take a look at a number of the receivers. Look at just 25 through 30 or 25 through 40 here in the rankings here. And you tell me, would you prefer to have O.J. Howard over Sammy Watkins, Golden Tate, Corey Davis, Marvin Jones, Dede Westbrook, Curtis Samuel? Like, I mean, there are a number of tight ends who I would actually take over any of these guys just because of the way they fit in the offense there. So it's not even just the top 50 wide receivers. You're talking about even top 20 that these guys can come in there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. And, I mean, obviously we're higher in Howard this year. I think a lot of people are. So he's definitely going to be higher in a lot of projections, a lot of ADPs, a lot of things that people are expecting good things out of him this year. So that was definitely a good person to compare those guys to. But if you kind of look your way down, the tight end list, and then you get yourself to like a Chris Herndon, then are you looking at?
Hey!
I didn't say because he's a Jets player. I just happened to point him out to you. Like if you ended up going with a Chris Herndon, now compare them to a Sammy Watkins, compare them to a Golden. Like where are you going in that direction, right? Like you'd probably rather go with the receiver, but if Herndon's getting more fantasy points for his catches and first downs, then he's more competitive with those plays, makes him more valuable as a player.
What if Chris Herndon turns into that target in the red zone that Eric Ebron became for the Colts?
What if, you need the Jets to get in the red zone for that to happen?
Dude, really? You gonna be like that? Is that how it is? No, but listen, Vance McDonald, another guy who's got potential upside there. I'm just looking at some of these names that, listen, if these tight ends end up with like 5 or 6 touchdowns, it's definitely going to surpass a number of those wide receivers there. I don't even have to. I mean, it's just that's all it needs to happen. Eric Ebron was dog crap before he went to the Colts. He was dog crap before he goes to the Colts. Now all of a sudden he's like a double-digit touchdown guy. Yeah, you'll see some regression there. But even if he's got 8 touchdowns on the season, that's going to surpass a number of wide receivers.
It helps that he had a better quarterback and a better system. Though a lot of people I think were intrigued by Ebron going to the Colts last year because of the move to Indy. It helped that Doyle got injured. Definitely for sure allowed him to have a much larger role than I think anybody anticipated. It also helped that Indy had no number 2 receiver, on that team either. It was just T.Y. Hilton and Ebron. So again, system fit makes a lot of sense for a lot of these guys. I think Vince McDonald's a guy that a lot of people are high on this year because there's no true number 2 receiver going against Juju Smith-Schuster this year. We know that Big Ben loves throwing to the tight end. Same thing with, we mentioned earlier, O.J. Howard. I feel like he's going to be a good fit there this year in Tampa Bay. So definitely good guys, that are up and coming. And if they get more fantasy points because of it, they'll be more valuable this year. So, I mean, to the point, like I said, if you wanted to combine them into a wide receiver, tight end sort of position, I'm okay with it. Otherwise, I don't see the harm in throwing them a few extra points.
All right, well, see, look at that. If you guys need an interpretation on what Jon Impemba just said, he basically just conceded this last argument to me, which means I win. No question about it. No question about it. Tell me what you guys think. Are you building your own fantasy leagues? Are you starting them from scratch? Does this intrigue you to increase the scoring for tight ends? And what's that going to do for the value of the position overall? Is this something that you would keep for years and years and years, or is this something that you would say, well, we just have to adjust it based on the trends in the NFL? At JMpemba777, at RotoBuzzGuy, at Fantasy Alarm. Hit us up. John, any final thoughts other than the fact that you just lost?
I don't believe that I lost, but if you want to try to take a win, that's fine. You work hard enough to get the W, so I'll concede.
Look at that, like crumbling, like day-old coffee cake, like James Grande in a debate on basketball. You just crumbled, dude. Look at you.
I didn't crumble. I stood strong with my takes. I'm just gonna let you, take the win if you feel like you had it. But I mean, you said put it to a vote. So if you're watching this, leave a comment. Let us know who you think really won.
Sounds good to me. That's going to do it for us here on 3 Point Play. Thanks for tuning in to Fantasy Alarm TV. I'm Howard Bender. He's Jon Impemba. Big shout out to Matt Sells for producing today. And we'll catch you next time.